Welcome to the Marvel Alliance podcast, where we cover anything and everything to do with the Marvel Universe. From the comics, TV, and movies, we will go from Earth 616 to the Mojoverse to the TVA in order to bring the Marvel Universe right to you. I'm the man without fear, Chris.
I'm your friendly neighborhood Brent.
I'm the master of magnetism, Travis.
Alliance
Assemble.
Volume 207. And yes, it is finally here. X-Men 97 has premiered, and we've got a full show. We've got an additional guest, the host of the Animation Nation, the co-host of DC Alliance, Mr. Travis Hines is joining us because it does involve animation. So, we would have to basically bar down the windows and bar down the doors with adamantium in order to keep him away from this.
Got to blame Snell because he gave me the password for StreamYard, and this was open. So you guys were just like, "Yeah, okay, we're not going to fight it. Let's just roll with this."
There's that remove button right here. I'm just hovering over it.
No, of course. It's anime. The real thing is, you would have wanted to cover this show, and there's zero chance we were letting a Marvel show not be covered on our Marvel show. So, you are joining us for the next few weeks, sir.
Normally, back in the olden days when the show was started, there was TV shows and movies at the same time, and animation didn't get the shine that it does now because we don't have much out there right now.
Yep. Well, we appreciate it, and yes, that Travis will be joining us as time allows for his schedule at that point during these episodes, and but we are glad to have him, happy to have him. I know he's a big fan. He's covered at least over half of the first season of the original series on his show. I know Brent and I have both guested on a couple of those episodes.
Yep.
Season 4, got to season 4.
Yep. So, but all right. Well, like I said, let me first ask, as we all do, how are you doing, Travis?
I'm doing well. Excited to talk X-Men. Not even thinking about anything else, anything else. I'm excited to talk about X-Men.
How about you, Brent?
I'm good. We got an Alkalite trailer this week, which means we had a special meeting at work and we had to watch the trailer a couple times. We got new X-Men. Tomorrow's my last day, and then I got spring break, so I got some time off work there.
Oh, very nice.
And no, there's nothing excited playing for spring break, but that's just how I like it. So, I'm good to go, man. Let's do this.
Yeah, it was an interesting week this week, but I have now hit the big 4-0. Tuesday I had my birthday.
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
Thank you very much. So I've now crossed over that 4 decades, and I've grown a little older. I've grown a little wiser. So, but no, it's been a relatively good week, busy week, but yeah, looking forward to talking about this. So let us get all those lovely network plugs out of the way so we can talk all about X-Men 97. So we are part of the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network with 7 shows covering the wide range of geek and nerdom. To see the full schedule, check out the show notes below and subscribe to the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network on Twitter at GUAPod Network so you know when all the shows drop. We also have a Patreon, so if you want to throw a couple of shekels our way, we've got 2 tiers. Our $1 tier is our tip jar to say, hey, you think we're doing a good job? And then we've got our $5 tier with ad-free episodes, early access episodes, and Patreon-exclusive shows, including our first Patreon show, We Can Watch This All Day, the Marvel Alliance MCU Rewatch. We've got 24 episodes covering the entirety of the Infinity Saga. Is marching through all that, and Brent and I have just recorded the first episode of our newest Patreon show, Tales from the House of X, where we will be watching our favorite movies from the Fox era of X-Men. Brent, what did we record on Monday night?
Deadpool, the first Deadpool. We said we don't have to go in order because they sure don't go in timeline order, so why are we going to? But what we do want to do is make sure we have those Deadpool movies finished and out there before Deadpool and Wolverine comes out. So they got moved to the top of the list, which made me happy because, spoilers, I love those movies.
Yep, so that will be dropping next Monday morning for patrons at that point. So again, Deadpool is up, then we got Deadpool 2, The Wolverine, Logan, X-Men, X2, X-Men First Class, and Days of Future Past, both cuts. We also have you all at DC Alliance doing your DC films through the years. What is the next one on the docket for you all?
V for Vendetta, which I have not watched before.
Oh, okay. Very nice. I'll be very curious to hear your thoughts on that. We also have your co-host, Joe, doing his Multiverse Minutes. His newest project is the Disney Dives, looking at every single animated theatrical release from Disney at that point on the 1st and 15th of every month. His most recent episode, Pinocchio. I really do enjoy it. I applaud. Joe is always one to take something that is a huge task at that point and find ways to go into it. So I look forward to that. So he's doing a good job with that. And so we've got a lot of back content out there for everyone. We want to thank our patrons. We can't do this without your support. And if you're not a member of our Patreon, go to www.patreon.com/GUA network so you know when all the shows, until you can be a member and get all this stuff. And if you can't join us on Patreon, totally understand. If you can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts, we greatly appreciate it. And last but certainly not least, we want to thank our official sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com, for our omnibus hardcover collected edition needs. JP and the crew at OPB have got it going on with excellent customer service, immaculate packaging, ships around the world. Got all these lovely omnibus collected edition from Marvel coming into print. Check them all out at that point. Use that code MARVELGUA at checkout to get $2 off every single order. And we want to thank them for being an official sponsor. All right. So, we've already got people in the chat really excited, all in the game, saying great to see that both critics, Rotten Tomatoes at 100%, audience at 93%, are loving the show. And looks like we got a quick correction. Score actually went up to 94%.
Yeah, but they don't. Yeah, I went when he said that. I went to look, and I'm like, "Holy cow! It's at 94 actually." But they don't say how many reviewers that is, so I don't know how many. But
Sure.
That is still ridiculous. I mean,
For just the 3 episodes that they got.
yeah.
I didn't see a negative review. I didn't see a negative review out there, which is shocking. You usually see at least one negative review. I didn't see one.
Yeah,
so
fantastic start.
Yep, just says all in the game saying just says 100+ reviews, but it's always a good sign when a show is that much on Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic. Yeah, it's great to see. So, gentlemen, we've 2 episodes dropped on Wednesday, and we'll be breaking those down shortly. But high level thoughts, just both episodes, non spoiler thoughts.
Sure. Bottom line is they nailed it. And I am speaking as somebody who watched this show originally as it was coming out, and who had the VHS tapes and went to Pizza Hut and got like the tie-in merchandise and the tie-in comic book and stuff like that from Pizza Hut. So I'm one who has been with this show from the beginning, and they really recaptured that feel. And right away, like the opening theme song, right? No, they didn't just reuse the theme song. They recreated most of it shot for shot, and then they have a couple other things in there. But it's so well done, and it just really made you recapture that feel. And it's like I was a kid again watching this. And is that going to color the next, X number of weeks, however many more episodes we have? 9 more weeks, I think, to 8 more weeks, whatever. Of course it is. But I tell you, I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
I think Brent nailed it too. It was fantastic. I don't have any criticisms. I thought that they handled it really well, like just adapting it now and going forward with it. You got to remember too, season 5, because I'm right there with Brent. I was right there when it started, and season 5 was rough even back then, just to see a different animation style. And I was really hesitant going into this, I must say, after watching the trailer with the animation style. But I told Chris said he wasn't watching anything, but I happened to watch the fight that happened with the Sentinels, so I won't say anything else but that. I saw the animation of that, and then I was 100% on board. So that got me no worries, and this whole 2 episodes was fantastic. There was nice Easter eggs for the big X-Men fans, but also you didn't even need to watch the show to keep going forward. I think they did a great job of just going forward. They used another, like, just what they did with Jubilee. They did that again here in this, and I just thought just great all around. Just no criticisms for me for how they started this season.
Yeah, I don't know what I can say about this. That I think the thing I hated it. I absolutely hated it in the sense that I only had 2 episodes to watch.
Right. I mean, my biggest criticism, in all seriousness, I wish it came out on Tuesday evenings. I like that Tuesday night slot better than the Wednesday morning. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong. I'm getting up. I'm watching it before work. I can't have David telling me he's seen the episode and I haven't seen the episode yet.
But darn it, he will keep trying. No, I'm with both of you. Like, I was religious about watching this every single time I could see it. Like, that theme song comes on. Like, X-Men were one of my gateways next to Batman the Animated Series. I mean, for those on live, like you can't see it right here, but this is just part of my collected editions, and I literally have the entire run of Chris Claremont's X-Men from beginning to end, all in collected editions, because that's X-Men have a, when I say X-Men mean a lot to me, that's an understatement. Like these characters have a very special place in my heart. This show has a very special place in my heart. And when I first saw the trailer for the series, like, yes, I knew the animation style was changing, so it was a little jarring to see. I didn't hate on it as much as I saw other people did, because I was one of those, like, let me see a whole episode to see how it works. And even kind of I got the opportunity to see this on my big screen, because a lot of times I can't, when I'm watching before work at that point, I've got to watch on the smaller TV and everything like that. But kind of seeing it on a bigger screen and seeing kind of how it works at that point, I think the update in the animation works really well, and what they tried layering it over did a good job with it. Some of the characters, namely, I will say this, but I'll still say he is wrong. Cyclops definitely had some more agency about him than was done in the previous show.
You might say he leveled up. He leveled
up.
Yeah, leveled up. He's still wrong and will forever be wrong at that point. But I think he was one of the standout characters of what they decided to give in the show, amongst others. Very happy. I think it was a good decision to release these two particular episodes, because the first episode deals with the aftermath of what happened in the final series finale of that, and then the next one sets up what is going to be the future of this series at that point, and dealing very quickly, but in a very good way, quick, of Magneto coming back into place. So again, great stuff. I think I have little nitpicks here or there, but nothing that would do it. So I'm very excited to start breaking these down. So if no one else has any kind of thoughts, we're going to take our first ad breaks, because again, we'll do the spoiler wall. So if you have not watched the first two episodes of X-Men 97, go do that now, or beware, we're going to spoil and break down everything, talk about all the Easter eggs. So listeners, these ads help keep the lights on in the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We don't get to choose what ads come on, and they can be a bit loud. Give it a 3 count before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we are back. All right. So we, recapping, I think, Brent, Fact or Fiction, or was it Travis? I can't remember, previously on X-Men. We definitely got that.
It was me. We got it in episode 2. We did not get it in episode 1.
Okay, we did not get it in episode 1.
They also changed the previously on voice. Fine. I just wanted to hear
there
previously on X-Men.
There was a reason for that, though.
I'm sure it has to do with the original voice actor or licenses or something.
No, it has nothing to do with that.
Okay,
we'll get there. But I think they do a good job in the sense of setting up what happened, and giving everyone an understanding of like what happened. For those that didn't watch the show or can't remember at that point, we do set up that Professor Xavier had an assassination attempt on his life. He was dying. Magneto was getting ready to start a war. And the X-Men came, convinced him otherwise, to go stay at his bedside because he was passing away. Then out of the thing, the Shi'ar Empire comes, Lilandra comes, says, I've got to take him off planet. It's the only way he isn't going to die. He leaves them all behind, and goes. So we open first with the new animation Marvel logo with homages to a long history of Marvel and animation. We start off with the 1960 Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, X-Men the Animated Series, Wolverine, the Silver Surfer, which is interesting because though very well animated and a lot of money poured into it, technically a flop by fan response, Uatu, Marvel Zombies, and Star-Lord T'Challa.
I love the way they did that because it mirrored like the Marvel Studios opening where you get scenes from previous movies, but they're just honoring previous Marvel animation. Mm-hmm. And right away, starting with my boy Spider-Man and that, I'm like, oh, I love to see that. That was such a cool opening.
I know
such a nice shot.
A lot of us probably would have preferred, including you, Travis, the Spider-Man the Animated Series, but I get why they had to choose 1960 Spider-Man because the start.
They chose the right one.
It was okay. My initial thought was, are these other things, because we're getting Spider-Man freshman year, are we getting the other, will those other properties end up in animation at some point? Silver Surfer, Fantastic Four. That was my initial thought when watching that, after thinking, oh, this is cool, was, is there a chance we could see these other two properties revived in animation? I do think there is a possibility.
I will be very curious to see, like, out of all of them, they chose Silver Surfer to honor versus Fantastic Four, Iron Man, or, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, something like that. Like, I was very surprised. And also, it's going to be interesting to see when we get freshman the animated Spider-Man. What are we calling it now? Is it freshman year? What are we calling it?
I think so. Or Homecoming.
No, Friendly Neighborhood Spider. No, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Yeah, Friendly Neighborhood
Spider-Man.
So will that change in the sense of how that goes? So we'll just kind of have to watch. But we transition to the title logo with the updated theme music, which, again, very cool. I like how they updated. I mean, the biggest smile on my face when that comes on. I'm sure you both had the same thing.
Oh yeah.
Question for you guys: was that song stuck in your head the rest of the day? Because that was for me. I couldn't get it out of my head for the rest of the day.
Peek behind the curtain, doing the notes for all this probably took it almost an hour and a half. So yes, it was definitely playing in my head.
I, just a couple weeks ago, finished my rewatch of the entire series. That song has been stuck in my head for a very long time now.
And I know I shared with you, Travis, I don't know if Brent's seen it yet. I shared with one of my favorite TikTokers who does the wedding songs, like the bride and groom, they like it. So doing Beyonce mix up with the X-Men, the X-Men theme songs. Check that out if you haven't seen it. But so we get we get new hero cards for Morph and Bishop now being a part of it. Professor X is still there for at least this episode. The original was a bit faster, moving along. Jean is next instead of Wolverine, who has updated her look to more hair flowing out and kind of more channeling the comics version of when Jim Lee created her versus the animated series. Morph is fighting a sinister presence during the intro, which I thought was pretty cool. We get, like I said, Charles Xavier still there, even though he's dead, and we're going to get that a lot in both these episodes. The ending shot of the villains has also changed. It has Juggernaut, Emma Frost, Lady Deathstrike, and interestingly enough, the original animators is from Ryan Airy from Screen Crush, said the original animators gave her too much cleavage, and they had to redraw every frame of her to put a white T-shirt on her. At that point, this was back in the animated series, not X-Men '97. That includes Pyro, Mystique, Sabretooth, and Avalanche. There is no more Warpath or Yuri Topple, aka the Gargoyle. Thunderbird was supposed to be in the original show. He was supposed to be the one that died, not Morph, but they didn't like the optics. Imagine this, back then, they were at least conscious enough to understand we don't like the optics of killing the only Native American character that we have on the show. And so that's why you see Warpath in the animated series opening as a villain shot, but that never came to pass. So Morph was actually created for the show. Morph only became a comics canon character during the Age of Apocalypse storyline, in actually the look that Morph is having now with the white face.
I thought that was the case too, and I Googled it earlier, and apparently Morph was created before the show, but just barely ever seen.
Really?
I
know they had Mimic back in the original Stanley Jack Kirby creation, but
Morph was around back then, but there was a version of Morph farther back. But
okay,
Morph as we know him, like as the white face as we know him in this, that is much more recent. For me that was I was introduced to him in Exiles. But Age of Apocalypse predates that, and I thought he was. The Exiles version is not from Age of Apocalypse, though Blink in that show is. But I thought they took the design of the Age of Apocalypse one.
Yeah, because I remember when Blink meets him in the first issue, she thinks it's her Morph. So, so we open the episode in New York City, 1997, Twin Towers in the background. They notice some, Marvel's animation could be Marvel animation, give those tips of the hat. We're going to see signs for DaCosta, for Roberto DaCosta's family. Vistacor, this is in Marvel Comics, the security firm in the MCU that actually Scott Lang works for. They actually own WHIH.
Okay. I didn't know that one.
Yep. and we actually see a sign for Stark Industries.
Notice that one.
Yep. News report goes on saying it's been about a year since Charles Xavier was assassinated by Henry Gyrick, which I do like that they put the right Henry Gyrick look instead of the one that Henry
Yeah.
Gyrick became in the final episode.
Yeah,
Notice
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Notice that. Notice that.
We see a poster for like a wanted poster for a mutant, and I've seen people say it either looks like Marrow or Yukio, who was a lover for Wolverine and in Deadpool 2. So
Mm-hmm.
that was what Negasonic Teenage Warhead.
Yeah,
They were
yes,
having a relationship.
Yeah.
So then we flash to the secret hideout of the Friends of Humanity, and what do we see going on there, guys?
They're rocking Sentinel tech. They have a giant Sentinel arm in there, and they've got all these little like hand cannons that they've used for Sentinels. Like where?
Mega
how
Man,
did-
Mega Man blasters.
Mega Man
Mega Man
cannons.
You're right. Mega Man
cannons.
Blaster is definitely the right way to describe it. How did the FOH put all that together? Who is bankrolling those losers?
That's one of the interesting questions that I can't wait for us to get answered. Who's bankrolling these guys? We know who's leading these guys, or we will find out who's leading these guys after the second episode.
Yeah. But apparently they are capturing mutants to pay for this unknown buyer $10,000 just to hunt them. They are collaring the mutants with the famous Genosha collars that negate the powers. We're introduced to Roberto da Costa, aka Sunspot, who was introduced in the comics in 1982. He was captured by the Friends of Humanity, but they even say he did not display the powers, but somehow they knew he was a mutant. Sunspot's powers in the comics, he can absorb solar radiation and send it back to his targets, which makes him a very powerful mutant. He says he's a good mutant, and it's not his fault because he was born this way, which is a line that's been used many times in the series. But also, I felt that watching this episode in its entirety was definitely a lot of tips in the hat of the very first episode, Night of the Sentinels, parts 1 and 2. Not in a bad way, but I felt they were doing that also on purpose.
Well, DaCosta is Jubilee. He's just, that's our way in here. That's the way for the general audience who haven't experienced the first 5 seasons of the show to get immersed into it. Once you get a little bit of backstory, the lead in, I thought it was a fantastic idea, Chris. And you are right. There's a lot of shades of that with the Sentinels here and how that plays out in the first couple episodes of season 1.
And they even call it out because Jubilee says like, "Oh, I ran away once." But you know, as somebody who loves watching the X-Men take out the Sentinels and had that Sentinel toys kid and stuff, and yes, I loved it. I'm like, yes, please just take them out. But I do want to mention real quick, overall, I think they did a pretty good job for those viewers who are new to the show, who didn't see the first 5 seasons. There's definitely stuff that you'll understand more, that references you'll get, or things you'll appreciate better, like everybody who Morph turned into, for example. But overall, I thought they did a really, really good job of catching people up.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So the air suddenly starts getting cold around them, and they grab those modified Sentinel tech, and and it's interesting just because, as we said, the Sentinels were done for. They took them down. The UN captured them, destroyed what was there. But I do I like this idea in the sense of the FOH getting a hold of this. Reminded me of Adrian Toomes in Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Yes, his whole group with them using that. I did think too, Chris, one thing about the Sentinels being out of the picture. In all the future scenarios we've seen, there are Sentinels in this show, well, in this continuity. So I kind of figured they'd be back bigger and better than before.
Yep. So Storm and Bishop roll in, and they are able to stand toe-to-toe with them for a while, but they do become overwhelmed, and then bam! Blast comes in again. They say there's always more X-Men coming, and Cyclops blasts in, and this is probably the most powerful I have seen Cyclops rock his powers outside of the comics. Like I was very impressed by the animation and how agile, and made Cyclops be pretty BA. I will not lie. Like it was very impressive what they did, and like I said, in the critical of the original animated series, Cyclops always came rather stiff in the sense of how his power set was used.
They did so much awesome stuff with this. Like when he used his powers to like dash himself backwards, shoot himself backwards, holding on to Roberto. The way that he mixed in hand to hand fighting with his optic blast at the same time. And you know they did the one thing they always do with Cyclops, and they were inconsistent with. Does he need to hit the button on his visor to fire or not? They even did that, which I had to get a chuckle at. In the Ultimate X-Men series, they say he has a second button on his glove he can push to trigger it.
Yes, and I think they've made that canon also in the mainline 616 too.
It still gets a laugh out of me. But the things they did with him in this were just so cool. Not to mention, you know, skydiving Cyclops. Like, what did Rogue call it? Catch an X-Men day?
Yeah.
He didn't need to be caught at all. He had the coolest landing.
That blew my mind on that one. And the smile on his face when we get to it. But that was a cool moment too. You know, one of them grabs his visors and he acts kind of scared and plays possum. He's like, "Oh, don't hurt me, don't hurt me." He's like, "Psych," and then takes out, opens his eyes, blasts everyone, takes them all out, and able to get Roberto out of there. We do see that Daily Bugle newspaper go by that we saw in the trailer. Bennington's Mutant Fashion Show. We see Banshee on the cover, Dust, Lindley. She's one of the horns, and Blink. And the question is Spider-Man a mutant, which was dealt with during the crossover and has always been a thing with Spider-Man, whether being a mutant or not. They also dealt with that during the House of M storyline as well, and then the Hellfowler Gala.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say one thing, Chris. There was a callback from the first couple episodes of season 1 with Cyclops. When you said they had his visor off, he said the knot line that he did with the Sentinels. That was a nice little callback as well. Like you said, there are some little things here sprinkled out from the first few episodes.
Yeah, I like that. So we shoot back to Xavier's mansion, and we see Gambit cooking beignets, wearing a great cutoff t-shirt, just like the 90s. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who've never seen 90s fashion, yes, this was a style choice of men and women at that point. So let's not get too crazy with it. He's just rocking the fashion style of the time. And arguing with Scott about him not being there and helped the previous night. And I like it how Rogue is defending Gambit, saying, "Oh, Bishop and Storm they're tougher than Scott was letting on," and saying I like it how she said, like, she's saying it's been a few months, but then you get the news report saying it's been almost a year at that point. So timelines for them are kind of a little sketchy at that point. I'm still going with it's almost been a year.
Well, you get Jean walking out in a second, and that kind of throws off the whole couple months thing.
Yeah.
Or Jean.
I mean, people speak very general. And, you know, that someone might tell you 6 months is only a few months. I'm like, I don't know. It's half a year. Others might tell you 9 months has been like a year. Like, I get it. At some point, would it be nice to pin it down a little more? Sure, but I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah. We get Morph walking in, portraying the professor, trying to rib on Cyclops. This is where the voice of Professor X is our new voice of Professor X. Can't remember the actor's name.
Ross Marquand.
Ross Marquand.
Also the voice of the Red Skull in Infinity War and Endgame.
Very true. And I highly doubt that will be the last time we hear his voice.
No, you don't bring him in just for that. No.
Come on, Factor Fiction. Come on, Factor Fiction.
He was also on The Walking Dead, for the record, and I'm sure tons of other stuff.
Mm-hmm. But Gambit tosses a charged beignet at Cyclops, which I think, you know, it's just like either he saw Jean coming in and or he thought Cyclops was going to blast it out. It's like, geez, Gambit, you kind of being a little risky there, bud.
It depends on how much he charged it. People forget there have been other times he has like charged something and just tossed it off and let it disappear. Like he did that in the first run of the X-Men. Now, do I think that's what he would? No, I think this was going to have a little kick to it for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think it. Like I've seen some people saying, "Man, he was really going to blow his head off." No, I don't think he was. I don't think he was.
Just playing a joke. He did the same thing with Wolverine when they were using the bricks. He charged one of those.
Yes.
And Cyclops shot it off. Same thing. Yeah.
So we cut to Roberto in Beast's lab, and he wakes up, and Jubilee is there, similar to how Jubilee woke up in the first episode to see Beast there as well. I will say this about Jubilee's animation. One of my biggest problems with the animated series, Jubilee is from Asian descent. In that animated series, and I know we criticized the final season at that point, towards the end, they actually started to get her more looking like her Asian descent.
Mhm.
Here, you finally have Jubilee looking like she is of Asian descent, and I say bravo for that. I cannot believe it's taken this long. That's one of the best things. My bravo. Make sure that again, because when people say Jubilee's, you can't tell in that animation in the animated show like she was. So I'm happy that we get that honoring of her heritage.
Not only that, Chris, she was one of the characters that didn't transfer over to the movies, and they basically put Rogue in her storyline for the first movie.
Yep.
And again, that kind of sucks because it would have got a bit of representation as well. So it's nice, like you said, to see her properly animated here.
Mm-hmm. So when he was saying that Roberto, they got to keep him there. Cyclops said, we got to keep him there. We don't want you being captured again. And he asked, like, what do you want to do what does he got to here for fun? And, they send him into the fun. And I was like, man, you X-Men are rough on your people. You haven't seen what his powers are, so you're just going to throw him to the wolves like that? Ooh, boy, what'd you think about that Danger Room sequence?
Loved it because it set up Magneto as well. Like what we know from Magneto in seasons 1 to 4, and even a little bit of 5. It set up that version to him, but we get a completely different version in the next episode. So I love that part of it as well.
I think it was all bark and no bite. It's Jubilee running the show. She's not going to do anything too risky to him. And we've seen they have different levels of intensity of the program. I think it was all just there for the show, give him a little scare, try and get him to pop his powers out. Yep. Jubilee wasn't counting on Wolverine himself showing up. I thought it was hilarious, but she wasn't counting on that.
I don't know. I kind of think she was. I kind of think it was. I did like it that he thought it was part of the program, and he says program off, and he's still there.
It really freaks me out too.
All in the game saying, yeah, you got Jubilee looking right, and Storm is more dark skinned like she should be compared to her old self. Yep. Brock in the chat also saying, so pleased with Cyclops here. All in the game also pleased with Storm and Cyclops. We got a lot of praise for going on there. We get we move to the professor's Professor X's office. They're reminiscent. I do like the homage to the callbacks to the original team and the original costumes, which we only saw in flashbacks, and we've never seen an entire episode with them in the former costumes. And they are talking. Cyclops is talking to Valerie Cooper, who's working with the UN. Now, she is an actual from the comics. In the comics, she's an ex-NSA agent who joined the Superhuman Affairs Commission and has had run-in with Gyrick in the past, managed to secure presidential pardons for the Thunderbolts. She brings up that Trask has been on the run since the final episode with the Sentinels, where Master Rule was trying to replace Senator Kelly's brain with a robotic brain because, reasons.
90s, that's why.
Yeah, exactly, 90s. So Cyclops is basically saying, we need your help. Quit acting like these aren't things. They had to have other stuff, and Valerie kind of blows them off. Said, we're doing our job. You have a little trust. And Cyclops like, actions speak louder than words, and kind of cuts it off. So, again, Cyclops kind of pushing the buttons of the UN. So
Cyclops being less of a Boy Scout, which, again, he's getting a big blow up here in these first 2 episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But it's rather interesting the conversation that he and Jean have about, now that they're expecting their first child at that point. What's Jean's kind of pushing him to?
Leave.
to leave, and she makes a. Well, I guess this isn't that same scene, so we'll just start with right now, just to leave the show, just to. I say leave the show, leave the team. Obviously, she's not leaving the show. But it is kind of a surprise, and it's kind of a surprise that at any point she would get Cyclops even to begin to consider this.
This is where my antennas started to go up quite a bit.
Yeah, just saying. We'll get to that. So basketball flies through the window. They go out there to see what's going on, and Wolverine gets kind of blasted by Jubilee. She's upset because I like it how all of a sudden, like, it took a basketball game to realize Roberto's gone, and she blames Wolverine for scaring him off. I was like, okay, it doesn't necessarily line up, but here we are. Cyclops orders Wolverine and the team to go look for Roberto at that point. Logan gets in his face saying, the worst thing about the professor being gone is that it now leaves you in charge. Now, in the original story Bible for the show, and this is in some of the X-Men animated series behind the scenes, that Wolverine does give Cyclops a hard time, according to the show Bible, but he does respect him as a fierce warrior, but he never would tell him that. But that's not, obviously where we're at right now.
Sure. And of course, it's like one of those things where it's like I respect that person, but if you ever tell him, I'll deny it till the day I die.
Not only the love triangle stuff as well, that still hasn't gone away. So that's what's giving us the friction.
Or you got the throuple going on in Krakoa, so
yeah.
Man, that would piss off a lot of the right people if they did that. So that would be fun.
No, they did. That was a thing.
Oh no, I mean in the show.
The show? Oh God!
I know it was a thing in the comics. I know it was a thing there. But really, it felt to me like Wolverine had kind of backed off a little bit and basically conceded. All right, Jean and Scott are together. I can't be a part of that relationship the same way. But I tell you, when she needed him to get to the hospital, he was there.
Yeah, in the next episode. So what did you think about that There was a lot of good conversations when they go to the dance club at that point. You get Rogue and Gambit's conversation, you get Morphin, Wolverine's conversation. What did you all think about those kind of... It kind of lets us into kind of moments that either we know about, but personally, I think Morph and Wolverine's conversation was definitely kind of pushing the buttons that... Morph ribbon on him, but I like that conversation. That's probably my favorite kind of one-on-one conversation out of the two.
Morph and Wolverine, I always appreciate the two of them together. Gambit and Rogue, it always just feels like it comes down to Gambit saying, "I don't care. Let me touch you. I don't care if it hurts me," and not like respecting or understanding what Rogue is trying to say. And of course,
quit creeping around.
Right. But I mean, that's Gambit's style, so I guess that's what he's going to do. So that was what I was thinking about those two. I wish we could see more of Morph and Wolverine. Like, how do they become friends? Like, give me a flashback. How did they get so tight? Like, I want to know. He makes him he told us that show me some, right? Like, but it overall, like, theirs is a friendship that I really appreciate.
I'm going to jump on the Gambit and Rogue conversation because I enjoyed that one more of the two, just because I thought that was a great way for general audience people to pick up on the things that we've known for the 5 seasons that they've been fighting against. You show that without even saying a whole lot of words. You can just see it from Rogue looking and seeing all the people dancing and touching. And then the little small conversation she has with Gambit, where Gambit's basically saying, "Yeah, like, I'll gladly touch you. I don't care about losing my powers and fainting and stuff." And Rogue doesn't want to do that, but again, like I said, it's good for... It might be tiresome for us watching it, as we've seen this play out half a dozen times at least in the 5 seasons prior. But for people just watching this for the first time, I thought that was a good one for setting up what's going to happen.
Yep, and Jubilee finds Roberto. He says if she danced with him, she'll go with them at that point. But at some point, we do see Jubilee showing off her powers as she dances. And we get Wolverine coming up to them with an FOA, Friends of Humanity hats that they must have scared him off camera, saying we need to get out of there. During that time, though, the other part of the team goes and meets Henry Gyrick in prison to see if he can tell them where the hidden bases are and where Trask is in exchange for a lower sentence. Now, Jean uses Cerebro to probe his mind from far away. And during the sequence, she kind of gets a nightmare scenario with a presence showing her a graveyard with a ton of dead mutants, this creature trying to go after her, Master Mold being reborn. Like, there's a lot going on. I have to say, this is, to your point, like, Cyclops is getting his hands dirty a little bit and trying to push the envelope probably more than the Professor would do.
Well, yeah, but he didn't have the power of the Professor to be able to just take the info. And they tried that with Jean, but Jean has never been on the same level as the Professor was. She's never been quite...
Well, she's an Omega level mutant.
But not using Cerebro. Using Cerebro, Brent. I will say she's not, like, I haven't seen her use Cerebro nearly to
Isn't
the
Professor X considered an Omega level 2?
No.
And, okay, so then I'll say the show hasn't showed us that.
Yeah.
They without the Phoenix anyway, they haven't showed us that she's Omega level. But ultimately, something was in there that messed with Jean, that threw it off. Cyclops certainly tried. He was willing to work with him. He was willing to, try and bump his sentence down, like pull whatever connections and strings he has to do that. And I don't necessarily think Professor X would have done all that. I think he would have tried to rehabilitate him from within the system. He would have gone and visited him, and they probably would have played chess, and he would have talked to him there. But I don't see him like just trying to straight up say you can get out 15 years earlier.
Yeah, Professor X is considered an alpha level mutant, but yeah,
Okay.
Jean, Storm, and Magneto are considered Omega level.
Then if it's not power, it's control. Jean certainly
Yes.
doesn't have the control that he has.
Correct,
Let's put it
yes.
that way.
So they get some They get enough information to see that this hidden base is in the Sahara Desert. So they call up the Blackbird to get the Sentinels up there, tearing out the ship. I mean, that Blackbird got torn up fast at that point. I do like we see Morph turning into Archangel, saving Wolverine.
Yes,
We already talked about Cyclops using the optic blast. And then we get the call that we saw in the trailer, but still gave me, I know Travis likes using it now with The Rock. Chills. Like, to me, my X-Men.
Mm-hmm. Always such a cool line. I love that. It's their equivalent of Avengers Assemble. And Morphed turning into Warren, turning into Archangel. Like, he's straight up using, it looked like, their powers in this.
Mm-hmm.
And that, Morph and the ability to use powers and stuff seems to kind of fluctuate on which version of the character we're looking at. I'm all about it. I'm glad they included that. Very cool. Definitely very cool.
I thought the Cyclops land, like the whole Cyclops part of this was the coolest of the whole thing. Even the whole group shot, I love the whole Cyclops of it all before that. Like, that was, like, you guys talked about it when we opened about Cyclops. That was fantastic. And again, that showed me reason why. Yeah, you're leader, you're out in front. What they did with his powers in these 2 episodes, bravo.
Yeah. And then they eventually find Master Mold and Trask. This whole fight sequence, this is what I love about, like, any of, like, the Legends games, Marvel Ultimate Alliance, everything, the combos that they got to do in this, the different fighting sequences. We get Beast controlling a Sentinel. I mean, this whole fight was just, you needed to have this in this episode. And just the X-Men just cutting loose and showing off all their powers. Like, this is what grabs people to watch shows like this.
Holy crap, when Storm came into the show.
Omega
like,
level threat detected.
Yes, and I'm just like...
First time they've used that term in the show, bring the forecast or whatever the line was, show them the forecast. That was such an awesome moment.
Gotta give a little shout out to the animators too, because her lightning was turning the sand into glass. Like, I mean, that's just an extra level of detail that is just bravo.
Yeah, so I mean, and then you get that whole thing with Wolverine, and we saw it in this sequence when Gambit charging up his stuff, morphing into Bob. What'd you think about that?
That has a name, for one thing, the belly up. And that's official because one of the directors was on the Slash Film podcast, and they said that's what they called it, the belly up. And so it was awesome. Gambit's on Wolverine, charges his claws, jump backs, and uses the staff to propel Wolverine forward, bounces off of Morph, who has changed into the Blob like he's a trampoline, and decapitates Master Mold, takes him out one shot. Oh my gosh, that was so cool.
We didn't get any. I don't think we've ever gotten anything like this in the live action X-Men. I don't even ever remember them like combo. Like, I know we've seen it with the Avengers when they're fighting Iron Man shoots and Captain America's shield and stuff, and same thing with Thor and Cap. But I can't remember ever seeing that in the X-Men. So just seeing it here.
No, I mean, to be fair, animation, so it's a little easier. But because it's animation, I'm glad they're doing that kind of stuff.
Yes, it just flows so well.
Yeah, All in the Game's got a question in here. In terms of power set, are there any difference between Morph and Mystique? What I will say is that I think in the idea that their shapeshifting abilities are basically the same. I think in the sense of Mystique's training as basically an assassin, hand-to-hand combat, that while Morph is not as trained at that point, kind of relies on the power sets he's morphing into more than what Mystique could possibly even deadlier at that point, while Morph goes more for the humor, while Mystique goes for the kill.
Yeah, and I cannot remember a time that Mystique changed and was able to use their powers for real. I'm not willing to say that definitively, but I know in the first X-Men movie that Mystique changed to Wolverine and he
Yes.
just like cut her claws off.
Yeah.
And so at least in that version of it, she didn't have necessarily the abilities for real, but it'd certainly be interesting if she did. Like it would make her a much more powerful character, and she's already really dangerous.
Yeah.
Well, adamantium. Like, I mean, if
Oh, yeah,
she can
I mean-
actually, yeah,
If she could actually shapeshift to adamantium, yes, that
yeah,
would be
yeah,
nuts.
yeah.
So really cool sequence.
Has she ever shapeshifted into a non-living object? Again, I'm not going to say it's never
Yeah.
happened. I don't remember it, but Morph has definitely done it.
Yeah,
tons of
Morph has
times.
definitely done that. Yeah. Well, anyways, we'll have to continue looking at it, but really good question all in the game. Cooper and the UN show up, take Trask into custody, and we head back to the Xavier's mansion. Roberto and Jubilee have kind of a moment. He's saying he's not going to stay, but here's my card. We know from, all the images that we're going to see Roberto again at that point. And we get to the team getting ready to play a basketball game. Cyclops announces that Jean and him will be leaving while Wolverine cuts in and says, yeah, you're leaving. Starts a whole fight about that. And then they get an alert that someone is an intruder in Professor X's office. And who is there when they show up?
Magneto. Magnus.
Magneto.
Eric, pick a name.
Yeah. Eric Lencher. Yes, he is there and shares with them the last will and testament of Charles Xavier, who has clearly left everything to Charles Xavier, including his X-Men. So we leave off with that. And interesting enough, this was Chris Claremont's original plan. Chris Claremont's gone on record many times and said his original plan by issue 300 of Uncanny X-Men, his plan was to kill Charles Xavier, done with off the board permanently, and have Eric make a full hero turn and become the new leader.
Ooh.
So that was his original plan for the series. So we are now left with Magneto now taking over the X-Men at that point, and probably for this does have comic precedence, as does the next one. Basically, is homaging a ton of Uncanny X-Men number 200. So yeah. So first episode down. Any thoughts before we take our next ad break to head into episode 2?
I'm ready to go.
Nope.
Let's go.
All right. So we'll take our next ad break. So listeners, these ads help keep the lights on the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We don't get to choose when ads come on. Can be a bit loud. Give it that 3 count before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we are back. All right. So episode 2, entitled Mutant Liberation Begins. So the opening sequence now has changed slightly. The previously on X-Men is no longer, it used to be narrated by the Cyclops in the original series. Now it is narrated by Magneto, so symbolizing he is the new leader of the team. The first title is now Magneto instead of Cyclops. Professor X is no longer in the title sequence. We get new shots of Storm taking down Callisto, Jean turning into the Phoenix, and Bishop spiraling through time. Magneto is then seen above Asteroid M. Now, Bishop being on the team, too, we saw a little bit of him in episode 1. I'm kind of with a lot of people. I was like, I hope we do get an explanation of why he is now in this time and not back to his own.
I'm okay with not knowing yet. Hopefully, by the end of the season, we've gotten a little bit more on it. But I don't need every answer in the first 2 episodes.
No,
And
I
it
agree.
gives people something to speculate about as well. It could be like we're told Cable's going to show up at some point, so maybe it's going to be tied into that. So again,
He's also running around without the armband for keeping him in that time.
Yeah, Beast has it because Beast refers to it at that point when he meets Roberto. So we get a accident at a Ferris wheel Coney Island. They're trying to rescue the people, but they're not able to. It starts falling. Then all of a sudden, it stops, puts back into place. The car is put down, and Magneto is above them, and it just starts freaking people out. He's in his new costume, the costume from when he started turning good at that point. The illustrious, if you want to call it the the purple and white M at that point. I think it's a cool look for the time, especially the way they made Magneto basically look like, Fabio in this. The
I mean, I
way,
like his original look better, but this is a cool look. I'm not opposed to seeing the alternate costumes. And it is funny that this new look is in the credits, but they have the old look in the credits also at the
Yep.
end for the heroes versus villains running shot.
But I do get it in the use of this, not just from a comic accuracy, but again, if he wants to get people to think he has changed, you can't be going palling around with the X-Men in the original costume when people associate they with the mutant terrorist.
I agree.
He also
I
says
agree.
in this show, in this episode, he says he doesn't wear the helmet anymore because Charles isn't around, and that's why he wore the helmet to begin with. So it would make sense that he would have a costume change.
Yep. So news reports are saying Magneto is appearing around the world, helping human and mutant alike. We see a flash to a war room with Val Cooper in it, military leaders. They're kind of saying, what do we do at this point? We head to Carp Denti. We head to the Carp Denti building weapons with the newspaper headline saying no more mutants. Carl Denti. My notes were bad. Carl Denti, who we saw introduced in the first episode, the guy with the slash marks about it. He will be also known in the comics as it in here. He's building a mutant color gun, mutant using the mutant collar to power a new gun, and this is Executioner. Executioner from the comics. He is a former FBI agent whose partner was a member of Professor Charles Xavier underground unit. Duncan would have gained a whole bunch of technology from the X-Men's team. However, after his partner's apparent death, Denti inherited his caseload, discovered that Duncan was involved with the Mutant Underground. Seeing the damage Mutant had done, he took possession of a lot of the confiscated weapons, calling himself Executioner, and became a vigilante to punish mutants. And he's taking on that basically persona here.
And not from the Executioner song storyline.
Yeah, correct.
For the record. Totally the same name, but totally completely separated events.
Yes. We head to the Morlock tunnels, and the Friends of Humanity are now harassing the Morlocks and capturing Callisto, Leech. At that point, stand me if I'm wrong, but I did not see a lot of women being in the Friends of Humanity, and now we have one taking front and center, being one of the leads in there. So I say bravo. Representation does matter, even on hate groups.
Yes.
Sure, I guess.
That's one way to look at it, Chris.
It kind of surprised me when they went that way, the woman taking the lead on that one. I'm all for it at that point because, again, hate is not just for all around men.
I'm sure all those men in that group don't exactly have her best interests at heart either.
No.
Yeah, they probably have things to say anyway. If they're going to hate the mutants, I probably think that they're not going to be equal in that sense. But who shows up to defend the Morlocks?
Magneto in all his badassery.
We go back to Xavier's mansion. Rogue is actually on, and she doesn't call him Magneto, calls him Eric's side. That's saying maybe we should take a page out of Professor X and give Eric a second chance. If you remember, Rogue was given a second chance because she was also a villain at 1.2.
Yep.
So,
in fact, at the time, that's all I thought she was referring to. By the end of the episode, I'm like, oh no, they're bringing this storyline in.
Oh
okay.
yeah, they are.
All right.
Magneto comes back, arrives, telling them that the Morlocks are now being sent to Genosha as they speak, and says that unlike Charles, who resisted helping funding Genosha, that will change with him.
He gives them a bit of crap too, which is nice. He's like, I don't understand how you guys didn't do this before.
Yeah, it's definitely got a little shady in there for sure.
Yeah, what did you all think of Jean and Storm's kind of little tete-a-tete and conversation as Jean's packing up?
It was funny to hear Jean say she kind of wished that at times her kid was going to be born human, especially compared to the finale of the first season when Scott proposes and she says, if we have kids, they'll be a mutant and they'll have to, they'll be fighting their whole lives. It was just an interesting way, but that also explains, because Cyclops said then he'd have it no other way. And that shows part of her apprehension too. Like it's a deeper pull, I think, into the original series than people originally thought. But it's a surprising admission, and then Storm even says, she's even curious as to what it's like, with a bit of foreshadowing.
There you go. That's what I looked at, especially was it, and it's basically her speaking to Storm everything was going to happen to Storm. Storm is going to become human. So again, I really loved how that set the table for stuff that we'll get in a little bit here.
Mm-hmm. And then we get another private conversation, Rogue and Magneto, as you had talked about just a little bit ago, saying he chose the helmet to avoid Professor Xavier spying on him at that point. But he's putting that aside, but doesn't want to destroy it because it's a remembrance of what he goes to. Rogue and him are getting a little chummy. She starts kind of taking off her glove, and Magneto putting on that charm.
Fabio Magneto, like you said, Chris.
Don't hate the player, hate the game, right?
Exactly.
You might want to tell that to somebody else.
Magneto's got
advantages. You want to got Poe ring on it.
It is funny because I think it was last week I made a crack about Rogue and Joseph, and it technically that's not what this is. Joseph was like a younger clone version of Magneto with amnesia or something. Like he didn't have the memories or something like that. I frankly don't remember all the details. That was a long time ago. But it's like these characters do have history together, and they had history together in Age of Apocalypse, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And I feel like there's one other time
Savage Land.
Savage Land. Yep.
Okay, thank you. And so it's like I did not think that the show was going to go there, but I'm
all here for it.
Yeah, I dig it. The series, it's got a history of pulling from the comics, and that's what they're doing here. Yes, please.
And the UN then arrives to take Magneto prisoner because he is deemed a mutant terrorist, and they want him to stand trial, and he kind of uses his powers to kind of show like, oh yeah, we've got guns that can neutralize you. He said, yeah, but you stupidly brought helicopters that have metal in here, so and plays that kind of turns the helicopter around and basically do blades of death like Magneto did in the original X-Men. But he eventually chose the better, put them down, and allowed himself to be arrested to stand trial. As I said, Uncanny X-Men number 200 is homage throughout the trial. The shots, there are whole lines lifted from this episode from Uncanny X-Men 200.
It's a fantastic job, Chris, of an homage and an adaptation, all the above. And just to see Magneto from season 1 to now, you can really see that the effects of season 5's finale had a lot on him, and we'll get a little bit more of that in just a little bit.
Yeah, he talks about his Jewish heritage, talks about the Holocaust, talks about even as a mutant, he is hunted and only struck back with what he considered to be the extermination of his kind, especially with the creation of the Sentinels.
I hope we also get a little bit of not his general backstory, but specifically the past, few months to a year, whatever we decided the timeline is on that. Like to see that transition from the end of the original series to where he is here when we pick up with him at the end of episode 1. I would like to fill in some of those gaps.
Yeah, especially the last will and testament of Charles Xavier being a book.
Chalk that up to a comic book or to a cartoon thing is all. Yeah. But yeah, it was a little weird. Has more of an emphasis than a piece of paper.
Yeah.
That guy got assets coming out the yin yang, and so many people need to get them that's why it's so big that it needs to be book form.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
So the Friends of Humanity break through the UN and starts invading, led by Executioner rocking the comic accurate costume. Wants to only take down Magneto, but kill the judges who are allowing a hearing for the mutant. Do not tell me that the writers and animators of the show were not trying to make it as similar to the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol.
100%. There is no way that I would believe otherwise. Watching that's all I could think of.
Yep.
Another country here. That's all I could think of too.
Yep. Yeah. So there we are. So during this time, Jean and Wolverine are watching this on TV, and Jean starts going, "Oh my God, he's here!" And I like how Wolverine jumps to, "Who's here? Apocalypse? Really? Yes. That was the one who we thought." I would have thought Sinister. Apocalypse would have been my third thing. She's no, the baby. I love the line, "Oh crap."
Yep. Yeah. He's more ready for Apocalypse than he was that baby.
I thought nobody knew that Apocalypse came back. I thought that he came back with. Or did they know that he came back at the very end there? I can't remember. I thought that he just took control of one of the guys that were trying to bring him back. And
I mean, that's what we saw. They don't necessarily know. They can assume that he's not down forever.
Yeah. Okay.
Plus, it was funny. So.
Yeah, he's also like a cockroach. He keeps on coming back.
Yeah.
So we do see when he's trying to drive crazy to get her to the hospital in time. We see signs for Ween's Cafe, tip of the hat to Len Wein, who worked on the X-Men. Romita Salam, also tip of the hat to John Romita Sr. and John Romita Jr., who both worked on many X-Men for many years, as well as Roy Thomas Street, who also Roy Thomas worked on many issues of X-Men. Executioner is able to stand toe-to-toe, even despite Morph coming in as Lady Deathstrike, Colossus, Psylocke. Hey, you got your comic accurate Colossus there, Brent.
It was great to see. I won't lie, it was great to see. Show me that beautiful costume.
I mean, even Bishop can't even affect him with his armor blast at that point because the way his armor is done with that. So I like how Storm orders the men to uncollar Magneto. She's basically saying, do you want his help? You want him to prove himself? I think he's as much in danger as we are.
Shout out to Storm, who totally takes control here, directs everybody to go everywhere, and they question her for half a second, and they immediately just cower to her and do everything, which is fantastic.
And even going back to like ask, with Scott, the whole thing of Scott and Jean leaves, who's going to lead the X-Men? I'm sorry,
right?
Storm.
Yeah.
Like I would have been like, excuse me, who's going to lead the X-Men? Right here.
She's already been like. It was already known she's the second in command in the field. If Cyclops isn't there, she had command. And
she should really have command because Cyclops is always wrong. So
well, yeah, but numerous times she actually was second in command. Why? It was just to set up the Magneto coming in. I get it, but all right, let's be fair. It was a little bit clunky.
Yeah, it was. So even Executioner is able to take off Scott's mask, and he's still showing restraint. Doesn't want to use his powers without control because he's going to hurt other people. They do make it to the hospital, and the doctor refuses to deliver Jean's baby because babies can't control their powers. Mutant babies, he doesn't. He says, "I'm not doing it." So when Rogue gets Scott there, he orders Rogue to use her powers to take the doctor's knowledge. Now I know in the show this is kind of a first in the sense of her taking powers to get specifically the knowledge at that point. Now in the comics, this is something this is something she can do.
Yeah, this has also happened in other animated series as well. Wolverine and the X-Men, for one, that she gets all of their abilities and knowledge at the same time.
I was trying to think of times that the show maybe alluded to this possibility, and the only one I could think of is when she touched the Juggernaut's head to try and knock him out, and she started screaming about her brother Xavier. That's the closest thing I could think of. Truly, Jean has done it before telepathically. Like she did it at the beginning of the Phoenix Saga, but it was new. So all right, if that's a new ability for her, well, that's fine. She leveled up too.
Yep, exactly. The Friends of Humanity get into the chamber. Magneto is able to stop them with this. I'd love, again, another great combo. Storm pulling in the lightning, enhancing Magneto's powers, and Executioner setting up his gun, fires it, and as soon as I saw it being fired, I was like, oh, I know where we're going with this. And Storm jumps in front of it. She gets hit. She goes down, and she's powerless.
Yeah, she can't feel
that damn conversation with Jean. Her fate was sealed.
Yep, and this is an homage to the neutralizer gun that Forge developed in the comics. He was actually paid for in the comics by Val Cooper to develop it to capture Rogue. Henry Gyrick stole it and used it on Storm, which did the same exact thing. Now, during the storyline, she does go powerless. She then goes on her kind of a self-discovery journey, and there is an arc in the comics called Life Death, which is a title of episodes in this series.
Yeah, Snell and I talked about that with an episode in between them.
Yes.
So knowing that now, because I did not realize that was the name of the comic storyline.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Odds are, to me, I take that to mean we're going to get Storm starting on her journey, checking with some other X-Men, and then back to Storm to get her powers back.
And shortly... Oh, go ahead, Travis.
The one other thing about the show, the previous seasons, you will probably get an arbitrary one scene of Storm in the middle episode in her journey. Just one, maybe for a minute and a half. That's all you get. Like Professor X and Charles in the Professor X and Magneto in the Savage Land. You just get one piece every episode.
Yeah, and even in the comics, when Storm did lose her powers, she did fight for leadership without powers against Cyclops and beat Cyclops, which forced Cyclops to leave the team because he didn't want to, he felt butthurt and couldn't stand, Storm couldn't stand being on a team that he lost at that point and went crying, and that's how he met Madeline Pryor. That was shortly after issue 200, but Storm, again, proving how much of an awesome, doesn't need her powers to prove that she's a good leader, doesn't need her powers. She was able to defeat Cyclops with powers, with his powers there. He was able to defeat it. So I wonder if we're going to get that.
She has always been a massive badass.
Mm-hmm. And in the Krakoa era, she's the only one who has never gone and been killed. And gone through regeneration. But also, speaking of that, Jubilee calling out, calling out Sunspot's power, saying, "Do you have power? Do you get gold balls coming out of you at that point?"
Yes, I laughed at that one.
That was good. That was good. I almost forgot to call that out. So, anyways, Storm's down, no powers. Magneto goes crazy, pins Executioner to the UN globe, takes the whole UN Council and lifts them up into space, and just looking like he's gonna not only kill Executioner but also killing the judges. And he's I think this was an outstanding speech he gives. Like, this is something that we are leveling up this show in the sense of, this is not just a kid show. This is also a show for us in the sense of the things he's saying we can directly relate to, especially when he says, reiterating, like, you all try to kill me, things like that, but Charles challenged me to be a better person, and my challenge to you is you hold me to it.
Yes, absolutely.
It was fantastic, Chris. It was probably his best scene in the series, and it was the second episode of the revival. So, yeah, I absolutely adored it.
It's like they are making the show for the kids who grew up.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes. And especially having him go up to the world and having him look at it as Charles had him look at it many years ago. So,
and especially the stuff he said about Storm, too. He's like, look at, like, our people here.
My goddess. Like, the goddess. Yes. The UN pardons him and pledges support to Genosha. Jean delivers her baby, named Nathaniel Charles Summers. Ladies and gentlemen,
Cable.
That name means something, and yes, Brent, it is Cable.
You've seen him many times, many
yes,
times.
Especially when he references, when he's going back and learning about the X-Men. This is Scott Summers, also known as... No, I know about Cyclops and Jean Grey. Oh, I wonder why.
Which is like the only time the original run ever alludes to it.
Yes.
I also looked at him and thought, I saw your son in an episode before. He disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler.
So Aurora is told by Beast that this appears to be permanent. Jean says that they will stay until they find a cure. She instructs Beast to contact Muir Island. She goes to her room. She's scared of lightning. She's scared of what's going on. She decides to leave the team with a note behind. And as the note's being read, we see Magneto and Rogue getting closer and closer. They are actually holding hands.
Something I missed originally.
Something you missed. I had to go back and show you that that's holding hands. Now, the first time they didn't. She pulled away as he was taking off her glove ever so seductively. Since his powers can't prevent hers from affecting him, and she leaves Gambit who's hiding there with holding the Queen of Hearts because she is the Queen of his heart. But in the Age of Apocalypse storyline, it was revealed that both their powers are based around magnetism. This is coming straight from Marvel.com, which cancels each other out. So that is how, in the show, I don't think they're going that way. I think they're just going with Magneto has a way to use his powers so that he can hold her hand. He can do that. So he is able to give her what she has always strived for.
Yeah,
And
we can call this comic book science and
Yes.
explain it that way.
Also, this is a past relationship. They've already been together once. She told him not to say anything about it anymore. I'm really interested. When did this happen in this like series continuity? Was it
Mystique.
Was it pre taking the powers from Miss Marvel? Was it after that? I'm really interested to see. I hope they show us that.
Yeah, I would like it. But again, like you said, Savage Land, Age of Apocalypse, Joseph. Let's get weird. Let's get nuts.
You want to get nuts?
Let's get nuts. So, Morph is like saying, this is temporary. She's going to come back. She's going to be a part of the team. Don't worry about it at that point. And there's a knock at the door. Morph thinks it's Storm and opens the door. And there's Jean begging to see the X-Men. Hashtag Chris told you.
Hashtag Madeline Pryor.
And yes.
I will say
Madeline
this.
Pryor.
I instantly
The
thought...
question is, who is Madeline Pryor?
I
Is it
instantly
that
thought...
one at the door, or is it the one that just gave birth?
Well, the comic books tell you it's the one who gave birth, but the show could be different. I will say, I instantly thought a couple things. One, Chris was right. Two, they really are going with Madeline Pryor. That's awesome. And three...
And we're going to get Madeline Pryor's lovely suit. Watch that happen.
Yeah, no, three, we have to acknowledge the
Would have been the 90s. Would have been the 90s.
The non-zero chance it's Mystique or a different shapeshifter. There have been other shapeshifters who have been shown. I believe it is Madeline Pryor too. But the show's history, there are multiple shapeshifters. There's a non-zero chance we're all wrong.
Well, I will take that. But here's the thing: people say, "Well, how could have this happened at that point?" Remember,
Sinister.
And there was a time that Mr. Sinister took Jean kidnapped and took her blood for a time. That did happen. So
captured him like twice or three times. He captured Cyclops and Jean. I mean, like at some point, you could have took a cell sample.
And all in the game pointing out, speaking of comic book science, the mechanics and physics of the Danger Room will always be a mystery to me.
Don't ever question the Danger Room. It's just awesome.
Yeah, because Danger will actually come after you.
Yes, it'll become sentient. Yes.
Yeah, you don't want that. So, all right, both episodes, gentlemen. What do you want to rank these out of 10?
10.
20. 30.
There it is.
There you go.
I loved it. I loved it. I'm ready for the
absolutely.
next one.
If the rest of the episodes can continue what they established this, I'm okay if there's going to be maybe it can't always be firing all cylinders, but if it does, great. I'm here for it. But right now they did it, and everyone's praising it. So love it. Can't wait for next week at that point. So, but yeah, Travis, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. One last thing. Shout out to Disney for doing the end credits very similar to how they used to be.
Yes.
It's not 3D, but still, it's just a very nice touch. You can tell, like you guys said, it's it's made for the fans that watched it back then.
And reading through it, it also acknowledges there that Morph is non-binary. It references Morph that way.
Yep.
Nice to see.
Point.
So I wonder if in the show we're gonna get like more overt that rather than this.
We'll find out.
I think we will. Anyway, thank you guys for having me. It was so much fun. Hopefully, I'll see you guys again next week.
Hopefully.
Later.
Yep. Thank you, Travis.
Bye.
All right, Brent. So let's head into the news. We have kind of one news item that breaks down to a few news items.
Yeah, and realistically, none of them are actually that big. But it is.
One's kind of big.
Combining all of it together. We'll see. Me reading through it, I don't think any of it's that big. And
confirmations are big.
So we'll see. Well, take us into it. What do we got?
Yeah.
First?
So, Brad Winderbaum, and he's getting kind of a reputation these days when he's coming on and speaking not only comicbook.com. Like he drops a lot of tea, drops a lot of confirmations. Feige's only going to give hints. Winderbaum seems to be spilling the confirmation. So, excuse me. For those that don't know, he is the head of streaming, animation, and television for Marvel Studios. So he had an exclusive interview with Brandon Davis for comicbook.com and dropped some knowledge. The first biggest thing that came out is he can officially confirm that a Nova project is in development at Marvel Studios. He says, "We love Nova. We are in really early development with Nova." And they said rumors have been spreading a while. He said about what's going on, and so yeah, he can confirm that Nova is going to be happening. He didn't say in what.
Not that it's going to be happening. You need to read the rest of his quote here. This is why
We will.
I think people are overreacting to this,
Yeah.
because he goes on to say, we're more like a traditional studio. We're developing more than we actually will produce. There's plans to develop Nova. I love him too. I've been wanting to see Nova for a long time. Don't get me wrong. If it actually happens, I don't care if it's special presentation, show, movie, whatever. I will be excited to see Nova. This just doesn't have me like over the moon excited the way I've seen a lot of people online about it.
Well, I think the over excitement is like we've heard a lot of scoopers and leakers saying they're developing this, but I think they're more excited that a official person at Marvel Studios saying this is in development.
Yeah, and I just will hold Feige to his Nova's a character with quote immediate potential that he said years ago at this point.
Yeah,
and so I will be excited when there are things actually like in production on this. Not because every movie studio has way more in develop than they actually produce.
Yeah, and like you said, that is typical because again they want to have a lot of irons in the fire and see which one sticks.
Yep. So what do we got next?
He also addressed the MCU strategy pivot of what's going on in the sense of putting forth projects that will actually work versus just, everything. He says that, frankly, in all honesty, there was a mandate to kind of create as much as we could for Disney Plus as quickly as we could. And there was a shift. And all of a sudden, we have to start spreading out our release dates. So really accounts for a lot of the delays. Now we're using that time. We're not sitting idle, so it's like it stays in the oven. You can bake certain things a little more. It's actually, I think, ultimately, it's only going to make things better, but most of it's just frankly going to sharpen. Is going to be frankly shrapnel from the business. So he is also confirming what we have heard for a while that, starting under Iger before he left, but really pushing under Bob Chapek, content, whatever it takes.
Yep, the Bobs here were just doing it, and reports are it was the same way for pretty much the rest of the Disney portfolio, Lucasfilm, Disney, Animation, Pixar, all of it. Just pump out as much as you can, and we know at this point that more stuff was announced at that frankly fun to watch 2019 San Diego Comic-Con than what Marvel was truly ready to announce, and this is just the other side of it. I'm surprised to hear somebody as high ranking as Brad Winderbaum admit this publicly, like admit that they were told they have to do as much as can. But I mean, he's not going to lose his job over it, so that's fine.
Yeah. He was asked, as expected, about the dismissal of Beau DeMayo, which we covered on the show last week. He said, "I can't talk about the details, but I can say that Beau had real respect and passion for these characters and wrote what I think are excellent scripts that really the rest of the team were able to draw inspiration from to build on this amazing show on the screen." When asked if he would consider what happened with DeMayo as a firing, as has been reported by the press, Winnebaum said, "I don't. We parted ways is the best I could say." So that's that. Again, he's playing corporate. He's playing that. He's never going to say that because he's not going to step outside the line. So accept them at face value. Don't accept them at face value. As we said last week when we covered this, when the Hollywood Reporter calls out fired, they also, they're not one to be clickbaity. If they did not say parted ways, their sources tell him he was directly fired.
Yeah, and he's not going to say too much because there's, like every HR department will will say it's personnel decision. You can't say too much. But after seeing how good these first two episodes were that we just talked about for the last hour, I got to ask even more. What happened? We may never know, but what happened?
Yep. He was asked about what if season 3. Now, remember, as was originally brought up with the original concept of what if that Marvel is only going to debut characters in live action before making any kind of leap in the cartoons. Now, Windebaum is saying something different. He said, actually, in the 3rd season, spoiler alert, we do start to push that boundary a little bit more. There's more fun to be had with the multiverse and who can come in. And addressing Cameo, he also addresses cameos coming in X-Men 97. I will say that, just like the original series had some really fun cameos that you just didn't expect to happen, and you can expect the same thing to happen in X-Men 97.
I still think it is very possible that somebody from the X-Men 97 team is going to show up in What If. Not necessarily the whole team, but I think somebody is going to show up. Like they're going to have Cyclops fall through a portal and show up with Captain Carter. I at some point I think it's going to happen.
I am fairly confident we're going to see an X-Men in What If.
Yeah.
I'm very confident. Now, I'm not saying necessarily Cyclops, just because again I just have this lovely joke. I think it could be someone like Storm, or and probably any of our, either Storm or Wolverine or something like that. But I would think, like, with What If, you got to do a twist. It's not just going to be Storm. It's not just going to be Wolverine. It's going to be some kind of twist on the character. But we're also going to know who they are.
And there's a bit of a loophole here for we're not going to have a character until we've had them in live action with Deadpool and Wolverine. Like they have Wolverine there. They could have a Wolverine. It doesn't even have to be the X-Men animated series version. It could be a different version of Wolverine, animated in What If, and they've technically still fulfilled that original plan.
Yeah, and especially like you said, that version, you can even go different versions of how portrayed Wolverine. I mean, for crying out loud, Storm had the ability. She has been able to wield Mjolnir.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's also a loophole they could do too. So
that'd be awesome to see.
Yeah. So I could definitely see that. I could definitely see it. In fact, why not? If they're going to pull something, let's get crazy. Let's pull that homage to Storm wielding Mjolnir in What If. So let's go there. And finally, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Brent. You and I have a special affection for that show.
I really enjoyed it. I know sometimes I have longtime listeners to my podcast think I've got a kind of a reputation for maybe not liking as much because I'll argue it wasn't canon after the first couple seasons, but I really did enjoy the show all the way through.
Yeah, I thought season 3 was the biggest game changer that they had, especially going into when they started doing 3 arcs in one season, each phase of the season. That was probably one of the best changes they made to that show.
And I know they had like big budget cuts and stuff like that for the last couple seasons, and they dumped them on like Friday nights, but
they still made it work.
I was still with it all the way through.
Mm-hmm. When asked about it, he said, when asked about the possible returns of other shows, including Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., he said, we're doing this right now. He brings up that we're in production with Daredevil Born Again in New York. They're shooting as we speak. I'm seeing text messages come in from the set. That's probably the next show. That's kind of interesting to revisit, referring to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's one of my favorite pockets of our universe and our fandom, and you never know is the answer, he added. When asked about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., he said, you're just going to have to wait and see.
I'd still like to see Daisy. If no one else, have Daisy pop back up.
I mean, how many times have we heard Scoopers trying to say, oh, Daisy's coming back, Daisy's coming back?
So many times.
I mean, Secret Invasion was probably a ton of people trying to say that.
A lot of people were surprised when she didn't show up in that one.
Yeah, a lot of people were surprised of how bad Secret Invasion turned out, including us.
Well, touche.
Yep, so. All right, so again, gotta love it when new shows come out. You get some interesting tidbits at that point. So, yep, but that's all the big news for this week. So let's take our final ad break for the evening before we get into feedback, Factor Fictions, and Comic Book Club. So, listeners, these ads help keep the lights on the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We don't get to choose what ads come on. It can be a bit loud. Give it that 3 count before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we are back. All right, Brent. As always, you put out the Spidey signal. What you got?
All right. First up from Anthony, DC Outlaw. Says, you've said anyone could appear in Secret Wars. What major past Marvel actors who are still alive do you think have no chance of appearing?
Edward Norton.
Is it too soon to say Jonathan Majors?
Yes. No, it's never too soon.
I think Edward Norton.
I think that's low hanging fruit, but
I know.
The reason I say Edward Norton is because, for those that don't know, it was not a good relationship on the set. Edward Norton very famously likes having a lot of control, a lot of say over his stuff. And Brent and I, if you've joined our Patreon and you've heard our talking about Incredible Hulk, spoiler alert, we actually like the Incredible Hulk and actually do like Edward Norton's portrayal of it. However, a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, he was there's a reason why he was recast.
Yeah. I don't have, like, for a real answer, I don't have a specific individual, like, this person who played this one, like Thomas Jane played the Punisher, but there's no chance he's ever coming back. Right? Like, no, I don't necessarily agree with that. I will just say this. I feel like if somebody has, like, massively badmouth somebody at Marvel in a way that we don't know about because it wasn't public, they're probably not able to come back. Or if there's somebody who's just physically incapable of doing it, because they're just too old, they're probably not coming back. But other than Edward Norton, I don't know. Like, I know there's been others. Frank Grillo has kind of, but I don't know. I wouldn't go so far as to say he has no chance. Other than, is Crossbones really relevant to Secret Wars? Probably not.
No, probably not. I know it's one of those that he hasn't. Even Dave Bautista has not he's not shied away from saying he's been disappointed, but he hasn't gone out. Frank Grillo's
they would bring Bautista back.
They would bring Bautista back. Frank Grillo's been a little bit more than what Dave Bautista's done, but I even say, like, he hasn't gone out and say screw the MCU, like, he hasn't been angry. He's also been sour grapes of what happened to his character.
Oh man, I'm brain farting on his name. The guy who played Dreykov in Black Widow just came out and bashed it. Like, someone like him.
Really? Oh, okay.
I don't. I mean, again, not a character you would expect to see in Secret Wars, but he did come out recently and, like, bashed the reshoot process and stuff like that. And so, like, he's probably someone that they're not going to bring back. But other than that, like, I really don't. I feel like anyone who is still alive and able-bodied probably has a realistic chance.
Yeah. Okay. All right, what we got next?
His next question, he has a couple of them. In terms of comic book movie costumes, we're in a golden age where even something like Madam Web has a good costume for its Spider-Women. What comic-accurate costumes that we haven't seen at all on screen, so not the X-Men costumes from the end of Apocalypse that weren't in the next movie, do you want to see?
So just any costumes we're talking about.
Yeah, he wants to see Spider-Gwen brought into live action.
Okay.
Yeah. Miles Morales, if Spider-Gwen's going to count for that answer, Miles Morales for sure. Other ones,
I will take Elektra Daredevil. I absolutely love that costume.
Yes, that is such a great look for that character. It is really, really cool. This sounds dumb. I wouldn't mind a Daredevil costume that had the D on, like the DD on the actual chest. Like, that would be cool to see as well. But I was trying to think of other costumes that we haven't seen, and it's like, okay, we just talked about Nova. Yeah, no, but we haven't really seen Nova yet. So I'm like, who's a character we've seen? And I don't have a great answer for this, right? Like, most of the major characters, we've seen various versions of their costumes. In the MCU, we've seen several different versions of their costumes. I really don't have a great answer other than to just say minor nitpicks. I'd like to see the Scarlet Spider costume, but that's opening up a whole nother can of worms.
You and the clones.
Quicksilver, I think, would be one. I don't think we've gotten a good Quicksilver costume in either iteration of the character, both the Fox side or the MCU side. Like, a good proper Quicksilver costume. Pre-Phase 4, I could have told you, like, a Scarlet Witch costume, Sam Wilson's Captain America costume. Mm-hmm. Like, there were a number of them that we got in Phase 4 or Phase 5 that finally it's like they've somehow this deep into it, they've upped their costume game. But I'm going to go ahead and let Quicksilver be my answer for now.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah, I'll be down with that. So,
all right. His final question, that we have a few others. With X-Men 97 premiere being so well received, do we think Marvel will resurrect another older animated series? If so, which one? He says Spectacular Spider-Man, fingers crossed. Snell says, to add on to that, if we had the choice, what would we pick?
If I had, I'll answer Snell's question first. I would resurrect the Iron Man series. Okay, that opening was so cool to me, but I really adore that series.
If not for the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man show, I would say that Spider-Man the Animated Series is the most obvious candidate. But I don't see them having two animated Spider-Man shows at the same time. And speaking to Spectacular, that's kind of a weird one because Sony is the one who produced that. I know it was on Disney Plus for a while. I don't know if it currently is. But that was actually, like, that show is owned by Sony. So I don't know where that one actually sits, legally speaking.
And the other thing too, like I would love to see Wolverine and the X-Men, but again, you already have X-Men 97. You're not going to have two, X shows at the same time with basically kind of mirrors each other.
Yeah, like
Um,
they'd have to end this show before Wolverine and the X-Men or X-Men Evolution or whatever else would come out, I think.
yeah, but if I did, again, Iron Man would be my choice, and it would answer both questions at that point, both Snell's and Anthony's questions. But if I really wanted to push, yeah, I would love to see Earth's Mightiest Heroes.
I was gonna say that one too. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely great show. Not my favorite character designs for those characters. I always
Okay.
thought Captain America looked a little goofy in that one.
I
But the
think
storytelling was excellent.
the storytelling was excellent. I think they were really going for that much younger audience than us.
Yes, for sure.
So I can't wait for my kids to really get to that age where they can really understand it. So
All right, we got a couple questions from Gary. Do we think the X-Men movie franchise would be as big as the MCU if they started off with solo movies? If so, which solo movies would they start off with? The solo movie argument applied to the Foxmen. What do we think?
yeah, Snell and I had dealt with that in the early iterations of Marvel Alliance in our first opening episodes. We always batted around that idea of how to do it, and I think they could. It'd be one of those. As we were trying to build, we said, "Oh, Disney Plus would be great," but now kind of the strike against Disney Plus is trying to not dump content like that, and I think the X-Men would be like that. Um, I they start with solo movies. I think in the age where we're living now with Bob Iger trying to do his sure bets, I don't think, unless it's going to start off, if you're going to do a solo, you have to start off with your heavy hitters with like Wolverine. And, and I think like with Cyclops, you use Cyclops and Jean, but I still think you're going to get a team before you get a solo. I think that's where Disney and Bob Iger and Feige say you hit them with the team, then you do solos.
Outside Wolverine in the comics, none of the X-Men have been able to hold a long-running solo series. They've all had little minis. They've all had runs that were considered to be ongoing, but 7 issues in, they got canceled or whatever. My answer to this is no. I do think that a big advantage for the MCU was that they started with solo movies first, but it's important to know that Iron Man was conceived as a character by himself. Captain America is a character by himself, and so on. The X-Men were conceived as a group of characters together from the
As a
start.
team.
And so that is why I think Guardians of the Galaxy works so well. It was always meant to be an ensemble. That is how it was basically conceived, or at least the iteration of the Guardians they were pulling from. The X-Men, they're all about being the ensemble piece. That's why
it emphasizes family.
yes, and
Hashtag
again,
family.
I still say the Avengers is a job, and they're not a family; they're a job. The X-Men are a family, and
He's a friend from work.
he's a friend from work. Because of that, you got to go ensemble. You just for the X-Men, I think you just have to. Now today, it's a little different. If they were doing it like if let's say they could slow things down or whatever, and if they wanted to do some solo special presentations about the X-Men to kind of introduce them before the first big X-Men movie, sure, you could probably get away with that. But starting it today versus starting it back in 2001, whenever that first X-Men movie came out, I just don't think it would have. I don't think solo movies then would have worked.
Yeah. So
His next question: even though Days of Future Past was an awesome movie, do you think it was a misstep being the sequel to the X-Men First Class and then being followed by X-Men Apocalypse? Those types of storylines should be the ending of series, not sequels.
I can understand your point in the sense of what's going on, but I think they did a good job with X-Men Days of Future Past of pivoting back into the past. Now, again, a lot of time had gone by from that one to where it picks up when Wolverine heads back in time to kind of prevent what leads to the apocalyptic future. I understand what you're saying. I will say that I was okay with what they did with it. I get what you're saying in principle. Days of Future Past is more of an ending than it should be a second movie, but I think they did a good job still making it a sequel to First Class.
I think the bigger misstep is the decades jump they were doing. First Class in the 60s, Days of Future Past in the 70s, Apocalypse 80s, and Dark Phoenix in the 90s, but these characters have all aged like 3 years. Like, it didn't make sense from that perspective.
Yeah, you're right.
But if I'm honest, I don't think putting Days of Future Past after First Class was a misstep. I think the misstep was, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but I actually mean it, was releasing Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix because they were such bad movies. I don't think it matters that they came out after Days of Future Past. I don't think that was going to help them at all. I'm sorry, those movies were terrible, at least in my opinion. And that's where I think the problem, if they had come out before Days of Future Past, like, you could still kind of do it, like, just flip the order of the movies and do it. But like, Days of Future Past, I think, would not have done very well after the audiences were burned, or would have been burned in this scenario, by Dark Phoenix and Apocalypse. So to me, the real misstep was, like, if any point, Days of Future Past should have been a new true reboot moment, and they didn't take advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah, I still would love to see Age of Apocalypse in animation or in movie form. That would be fun.
So, final question from Jim. What Marvel Universe residence would you like to call your home?
What a fun question, Jim.
Yeah.
I will say, I mean, it's not too terribly unobvious that I'm going to say the X Mansion. There's so many toys. So many toys.
So much fun, blows up every other week, builds characters, Colossus has said.
The Danger Room alone just intrigues me.
The boring answer is Peter Parker's house in Queens, Aunt May's house, because it's less likely to blow up, and you know what happens. But for me, the place that I actually thought of with lots of toys as well, the Baxter Building.
Oh, yeah.
So, but again, you have a very similar problem as the X Mansion and the Avengers Mansion, or whatever Avengers headquarters are in at the time. It just, they constantly get blown up or shifted to another dimension or whatever. They get dropped in the negative zone for a few weeks, whatever, business as usual.
Yeah, I don't think the villains never have like a house or a headquarters. You don't have the Legion of Doom.
Magneto had Asteroid M, right?
Well, I'm talking about, I'm saying typically in the Marvel Universe, you don't get many of those at all. Like I said, you don't get the Legion of Doom headquarters.
Yeah, so, no, that's fair.
Yeah, I like it. Not bad. I like that. It was a fun question. So, anything else?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Thank you all for writing in. We appreciate that. And fact or fictions from last week. One of these days I'm going to remember to have these ready to pull up so I don't have to kill airtime as I'm looking it up. All right, so I had these last week. Let's see how everyone voted. All right, number 1. The combined final box office of Madam Web and Kraven will not exceed the final box office of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. 100% say it's fact.
There it is.
Number 2. The Sentry will kill at least 2 members of the Thunderbolts as a result of losing complete control of his powers. 72% said fact, 28% said fiction. And number 3, Captain America Brave New World will be Avengers 4.5 as the changes brought about with the reshoots will set the formation of the new Avengers team. 62% said fact, 38% said fiction. All right, Brent, all you this week. What you got?
All right, so Daredevil theme for me, because that's what I was thinking about when I came up with my most recent list. So Daredevil theme, there's part of my brain's always thinking about Daredevil. Number 1, Daredevil will have the Marvel Spotlight branding. Fact.
I think that's fact.
Interesting. I actually think it's a fiction. I was ready to go fact. Like when I was ready to go fact, and then I was thinking about it more. I'm like, no, I realized Echo had it and she was new, but I'm going fiction because there's so much Daredevil history now. Echo had a little bit of history.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit harder than 51% fact, just because it just seems like they debuted the brand, they particularly called it out that you don't need to know anything outside of what we're telling you in there. So
I feel like other things, I think Wonder Man's likely to have it. I think Ironheart's likely to have it, but I feel like Wonder Man, I think, is a lock for the record. That's an easy lock. No prior appearances. Ironheart, a little bit of a gray area, but I think only the one thing. But Daredevil, so much prior history too. So I'm gonna say I'm a fiction on that one, and you don't always have to be fact when you bring it up. So I thought of the
Correct.
question. I'm like, nah, it's not going to happen. We'll find out.
All right.
Next up, Daredevil Born Again will be released on both Disney Plus and Hulu, like Echo was.
I'm gonna say fiction on that. I think that to taking what you said in the previous one, I'll use that in this case and saying it's also a very big history, a very big love. They know how much so many people really are looking forward to this beyond the fans. I think they want to keep that as a service seller for Disney Plus.
Okay. This one I'm actually fact on. I think it
Okay.
was a pretty big success for Echo. They talked about being really happy with the numbers and the performance of the show. And I think they're going to expand it out to Daredevil. Now, I also wouldn't at all be surprised to see it run with some sort of ad at some point in there prior to the episode of like, you can watch past seasons of Daredevil on Disney Plus.
Yeah,
And
that-
it's
that-
worth
that
noting
would be,
there
yeah.
that for a lot of people now, that Hulu and Disney Plus are effectively the same app. And so it's almost splitting hairs, but I'm not counting that. Like, just to be clear, if you log into just the Hulu app, I think you'll still be able to see it.
Yeah, I think you should do that at that point where if you put it on Hulu, you're going to have to do that. But unlike in other countries, even the one I just came back from in Mexico, like when you have Stars, their version of Hulu, already integrated into the Disney Plus app, that's what they really need to do that with Hulu. But I think the problem is they don't have controlling interest.
Well, no,
Not control. They don't own the company completely outright.
But that's already like that decision is done. Like that's going to happen. It's 100%. That is what's going to happen. That's why you're now getting Hulu in Disney Plus. Like if you log into Hulu, like if you log into Disney Plus and you are subscribed to Hulu,
Which I am not.
you should see them together. I think if your accounts are the same, if you have different like email accounts and stuff like that, but if you have the bundle or they're the same, you should see them together.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't do that anymore.
And if you have Hulu with ads, pro tip, there seems to be fewer ads on the Disney watching those shows on Disney Plus than on Hulu. At least that has been my experience.
All right.
All right, my final one, Daredevil Born Again. In Daredevil Born Again, we will experience the snap and or the blip from Matt's perspective.
I hope so. I'm gonna say a fact on that one. I really do hope so.
Yeah, I'm wish casting here because I really want to see it. I'd love to see them both. I'll be happy with either one, so I'm a fact.
Well, we'll see it. Matt won't.
Touche. But
Sorry.
But
There.
however you're right. But you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. And sorry, it was low hanging fruit, but I had to take it.
I respect it.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll put those out there on Sunday afternoon. Let your voices be heard. And let us continue on with Wolverine Old Man Logan. All right, issue number 69. So, part 4 of Old Man Logan. So, we left off with Hawkeye's daughter, the granddaughter of Spider-Man, getting ready to just lobbed off the head of Kingpin with a shotgun, and now she's about to do the same to her father.
Up until Wolverine has something to say about it and basically drives by with the spider mobile or whatever they're calling
Spider
it.
buggy.
And Peter parked the car and grabs him and takes him flying out the building Fast and Furious style.
Didn't kill anyone. Good for him.
Nope, it's not what he does.
Nope.
Not anymore.
And Spider-Woman, or whatever we're calling her, orders, now she's the new Kingpin, orders the chasing. Gotta love the raptors in the background. I love it that somebody asked the question, where do they get all these dinosaurs? Savage Land, they're freaking everywhere.
I mean, it's what you do, right?
Yep.
You go to the Savage Land, you get a dinosaur. It's like going down and buying a dog or something from the store.
I know, yeah. They grow up so big and so fast, and they're so safe as a pet. But unfortunately, as they're driving along, a huge pothole opens up, a sinkhole opens up, and everyone comes crashing down. And as Wolverine Logan looks around with the thing, yep, it's the mole people.
Yeah, that was gruesome and gross, and I kept staring at it. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. So he gets the spider buggy back up, and a spider buggy does whatever a spider buggy does, and it has the same power, so you can climb it up comic book science is a big theme for tonight's show. Comic book science.
Absolutely.
Is able to come out. I do like the random Venom symbiote. Just watching over them, I kind of want to. I want to know more about that. Can we pivot to that? And
I want that and the Loki skeleton.
Yes, the huge Loki skeleton, which I do like. Who's that guy? He's Thor's half brother Loki. You missed, man. You missed one hell of a fight that night. He's huge.
Yeah, but yeah, the Venom symbiote's there, and of course, Mount Rushmore has had an addition with the Red Skull.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? Yeah.
So at the end of this, they're at a bar. Wolverine's getting getting a little itchy to pop his claws when someone's making fun of him, having a heart-to-heart with Hawkeye. He storms out, and Hawkeye's like, "What did they do to you?" And we're finally going to get the next issue. We're finally going to see what exactly happened that night.
Yep.
So, but yeah, all right. Well, we will continue on next week with issue 70. We're coming towards the end, so Brent and I are going to be deciding. It's going to be our turn to decide which one we're going to do, and I think we've already kind of made that decision.
Yeah, so, I think we're ready.
Yep. So, but all right. Well, thank you all. This has been a fun episode. Long episode, but again, we appreciate Mr. Hines stopping by, talk about both of these episodes, and so appreciate it. And Brent, tell people how they can follow you.
Yeah, Brentech Prime on the socials, Threads, Twitter. That's where I'm at. I'm still on TikTok while we still have it here. So
yeah. You can follow me on all the socials at Chris Balga. You can follow this show on Twitter at Marvel A Podcast. You can follow my other show, World's Finest True Believers, on Twitter at Finest Believers. You can email the show at marvelalliancepodcast@gmail.com. You can follow the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network on Twitter at GUAPod Network. Feel free to tweet, email if you want to provide fiction, fact or fictions, questions. All our DMs are open. Continue to rate and review the show on Marvel on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you all for joining us live in the chat. Thank you all for listening. Stay safe out there, everyone. And as Stan the Man would say, Excelsior, true believers. All right, Brent. We don't have too many post credits that we're going to be breaking down a trailer, but we're going to be breaking down a trailer.
Yep, the Marvel 1943 Rise of Hydra trailer came out, and it looks pretty fun.
Yeah, so we'll cue it up and we'll kind of stop at key parts. Now, what I will say about this is a full cinematic trailer. We do not get gameplay at all with this. Right. So we are 1943. We get a man named Howard telling about what's going on. Another person named Julie talk about what's going on.
Do we know which Black Panther this is?
I believe this
would be T'Chaka's father, right? Most likely.
Yeah, I would believe so. That would fit with timeline. And it's rather interesting, this kind of storyline,
I was surprised when I heard about rumors of this game because it feels so different. Like the idea of it sounds so different. Just a Black Panther, Captain America team-up game, but back in the 1940s. Okay, I dig it.
And especially looking at Black Panther's costume, I love it very much almost combining a little bit of Gotham by Gaslight by Batman kind of.
Sure, I can see that.
What did you think about the voices?
They were fine. I didn't have any problems with them at all. The voice of Black Panther in this. Oh man, I forgot. I need to look it up. I forgot who he was.
I know exactly.
He's been in a bunch of things, including Walking Dead.
He played in The Walking Dead as one of the big leads. And the motion capture on these is spot on for these cinematics. Payton. Yep, there you go.
And playing Azuri T'Challa's grandfather, and confirmed also by All in the Game.
God, look at this movie. I mean, again, I will be very curious to see how gameplay footage is, because you can make an amazing cinematic trailer and the gameplay is just terrible.
Sure, absolutely. Hopefully, this doesn't go that route.
But what an interesting concept in the sense of you see some great fighting. between Black Panther and Steve kind of trying. They are definitely not friendly in their opening. They both see them as a thorn in each other's side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we see Steve kind of wandering around. They're all basically. It's interesting how they kind of frame this trailer. Like they're each having their own missions at that point, but each getting closer and closer to each other to a point of conflict.
Yeah, they're about to cross the streams for sure.
Yeah, so they're meeting on a bridge. He said, "Far enough, stay out of my way," Black Panther says. And I love it. He says, "I don't take orders from anyone." Well, why? Because you're a king. He says, "I don't have time for this." And they both clash, and here we go. We end it. Marvel 1943, The Rise of Hydra. And that will be coming out in, as it reveals, 2025. Maybe. Maybe.
Yeah.
So we get this. Again, they haven't dabbled too much in this, but it looks to be. I wonder if we will go to Wakanda at all. I know they have it back here at this point, so I wonder if we will be going to Wakanda.
I'd be surprised if we didn't.
Yeah. So, but yeah, cool trailer. We're definitely be looking at it, hopefully playing it if the gameplay do that. Maybe like we did for Spider-Man 2, kind of a breakdown and review when we play it. So we got a little bit to wait though. So, but all right, well, we will see you all next week for episode 3 of X-Men 97. Have a good one. Bye-bye.